Ramon Hurtado, sorry, is the first artist to speak here that I actually met online on Instagram, and I was admiring his work and found out that he's a local artist, which was totally shocking to me because I figured, you know, the thing goes out to the whole world. I thought you were some other country or something, but so that's how he ended up being here tonight. So I'm just going to let you talk because you're a great artist. So let's all welcome Ramon.
Let's make sure this thing's on. Check, check. All right, if I look like I'm going to knock over my water, let me know, please. I'm going to need that. So, thank you for coming, folks. Feel very fortunate to be here with you tonight, and you know, sharing a little bit of the adventure that has been my life thus far. I want to thank John and Kim for inviting me over here and for having us all over. My name is Ramon Hurtado, as John said. Hurtado, fun fact, actually means stolen. If you were to go on Google Translate from Spanish to English, Hurtado means stolen. I know there's a story there, I just don't know what it is. I don't know, it's again, who knows. Anyway, I was born in Tijuana, Mexico. And actually, if we could get the next slide. So there's a happy childhood, as you can tell. This is actually the same suit jacket, it just fits now. And you can see that I don't particularly change hairstyles. This was, let's see, I was 6 at the time. This is 20 years ago. 20 years ago, same thing. My sister is now 2 years away from being a Harvard-trained psychologist. But here, see, I like posting embarrassing pictures of her on her Facebook because her friends can see them. In any case, you know, we grew up in, you know, the very, you know, happy, economically booming 90s, you know, in Tijuana, and things were great. You know, I was actually, at some point, actually allowed to man a motorboat, which seems like a huge oversight because I don't know how to swim, and I certainly didn't know how to swim then. But there we are. In any case, also had some cats at some point in my life, still do. If we could switch to the next one, please. But, you know, growing up in Tijuana was actually really interesting. And I didn't realize it at the time. It's only in retrospect that I've seen what a bizarre experience it was. As a kid, you know, I'm going to really sort of date myself here, but getting pavement was a huge thing. I used to put bags on my shoes when it rained to go to school so that my shoes didn't get left behind in the sticky mud that we get in Mexico, at least in Tijuana anyway. And you can see that just the aesthetic, the way that people build homes, the way that people live, the way that people eat is actually very different. It's actually kind of a sprawl. You can see there, like, it's just, things are really organic. You know, things just kind of, the city of Tijuana is not a planned city, not as far as I can tell. It's only about 150, 170 years old at most, right? And it kind of just sprang up out of nowhere, sort of like these weeds over here, right? That's mostly what it's like, and that's the only real environment that I knew for the longest time. But I'll tell you what there is. There's chaos. It's like being out of the Wild West, you know? People don't have car insurance. So if you get hit, that's it. Never gonna see that guy again. But what there is this sense of this kind of abundance. There is a joy in living, a savoring of living that I haven't experienced in many other places. And it's funny because that sensibility works itself into every aspect of life down there. You know, as obviously everybody's eaten Mexican food before, because I'm sure this is not your first day in Southern California, I imagine. And that's a bit of it. You know, you get to experience at least like some of the, moderation is not a thing. Let's just put it that way. You know, and again, that is part of the environment that I grew up in, and that's, you know, that's how I thought things always were and always should be. And what's interesting about that is, again, I think it's several factors that make that happen, several cultural things. I think one of them is probably the influence of Catholicism. You know, you see Baroque churches and they're very different from, you know, especially like Baroque colonial churches, things like that. They're very different from, say, like your average American church in general. And again, that Baroque sensibility, I think, really filters down into every aspect of life. You will not see very many beige houses in Mexico. They're always painted in these loud, festive colors. You know, there's red and pink and blue and green and all kinds of, you know, things that are just completely clashing, and, you know, some of them just mortifying to the, you know, to the sort of the interior designer in all of us, right? But it has a certain kind of charm that I never quite got over, that I always really liked. I'll give you an example of how things spring up down there, okay? And I promise this is leading somewhere. So, when I was a kid, we lived next to this thing called El Cerro Colorado, which means the Big Red Hill, okay? Now, the Big Red Hill is a place where my dad and I would go, and we thought we were gonna go hare hunting. Never really happened. We saw a hare once, you know, but it's mostly uninhabited, right? I mean, there's like, you know, bits of wildlife here and there. And we lived right next to the place. This is where my parents bought a small plot of land and decided to, you know, like literally build a house, right? Because that's one of the things that people do. And so, a couple years into living there, you know, we had electricity and we had, like, you know, some basic services. We had running water, which was great. And then one day, we started noticing all these people on the hill. And then the next day, they had houses made out of scrap metal and, you know, just found objects. I mean, it was actually really interesting. Now, a week from then, they had electricity. They had electricity by running wires from where they were living to where our electrical post was. And the thing is, you know, if you put me in that situation, I don't know enough about, I don't know, wires and electricity to rig that up, but someone did. And what's interesting about that is that eventually the government moved in and said, wait, you guys can't do this. What's going on? The people refused to leave. That is now a neighborhood. It is a new neighborhood. It's settled. It's done, right? And so, in any case, that's given me a sort of appreciation for, you know, things growing organically, which I think has been sort of interesting. So, if we get the next slide, please. Anyway, when I turned 12, it was decided that I would go to school in San Diego. It wasn't my choice, but I wasn't unhappy about it. And so, every morning, at 3 in the morning, we would get up, get ready, be ready by 4:30, go to school, get there by 7, right? Did that for 6 years. It was a nightmare. It was probably the hardest thing I've ever done, other than some paintings. But in any case, it was, again, it was a different experience. But I have to tell you, at the time, it didn't feel that different. The move from Tijuana to San Diego, not that jarring, you know. At the time, there wasn't particularly a language barrier or anything like that. The only thing that was grueling was just, you know, crossing back and forth. In any case, it was right around the time that I moved to that I started going to school in San Diego, that I started really developing the unhealthy obsession that I currently have with drawing and painting. It was right around that, so right around age 12. I took a class, the name of which escapes me at the moment, but it was a career class, basically. It was supposed to take you out to meet people from different professions, go out into the field, you know, go field trips, get food, whatever, see if you liked anything, maybe something that you wanted to be when you grew up. I found nothing of the sort and I quit the class. But then one of my friends said, hey, there's this class in animation that we're taking, and all of our friends are there. And I thought, oh, my friends, that sounds great. Let's do that. So I did that instead. And it turns out the animation class was actually a huge turning point for me. The animation class was where I first got my very first instruction in perspective. I didn't know perspective was a thing. I don't even know if I knew exactly what animation was at the time. Yeah, I watched cartoons, but I didn't know how they were made. So I was taught the rudiments of how to animate, how to draw in perspective, and just, you know, and I just was given an outlet to just draw, right? And it was basically settled at that point. Figured this is the thing that I want to do. And so all through middle school, all through high school, I was doing a lot of drawing. I mean, I just went online and just devoured every single resource that I could find related to drawing. Excuse me. And it really became this all-consuming, thing, right? Whenever I wasn't doing any kind of schoolwork or anything, I was just working, and I was working, and I was working. In high school, I was lucky enough to go to San Diego High School, which is the second oldest high school in all of California, right? It was built in the late 19th century, right? They have a World War I memorial for alumni that died in World War I on campus. That's how old the school is, right? Now, the great thing about that is that they actually had plaster casts at the school. Plaster cast, singular, which, if you're familiar with art instruction prior to the first quarter of the 20th century, a lot of it was based on drawing from sculpture in order to understand light effects and structure and any number of things with a model that doesn't move or get paid by the hour, right? And so I would go back into the storeroom, check out the cast. Eventually my teacher got so sick of me asking to go in the back that she said, you know what, just keep it. Just have the thing. So that's what this is. I would just drape a towel over it, or late in my room late at night, I would just set up and draw and just go to work. I did a lot of research on 19th century drawing methods, and I didn't know anybody who could teach me that stuff, but I figured, I don't know, how hard could it be? It turns out it's very hard, but I'm just finding that out now. It's actually okay. So I'm gonna have to describe every picture to you now. But in any case, when I really got going, and this is, I did some reading, and people were saying online that if you really wanted to be serious about animation, then you had to learn how to draw from life, and you had to learn how to draw structurally, and you had to learn how to draw both well and fast. So I thought, okay, let's give it a shot. So I convinced my poor parents to pose for me for several hours on end, each of them. You can tell that my dad was thrilled about it, and so was my mom, right? And I mean, these are like 2 to 3 hour sittings, because for a drawing like that, that's quick. The most I could get out of my dad was, I'm going to be watching TV and will not move that much. And I thought, you know what? All right, man, I can do that. I can work with that. So in any case, did that. This is in our backyard in Tijuana. We had a very, let's see, what's the word? Rustic setup for just for grilling things and making stew. Actually, that's actually what we did back there. So we go outside in our backyard, sort of like this actually, and just light a fire, have some food, hang out. So in any case, in the time that I was in San Diego, okay, again, I'm very, very fortunate to be at that school. I had some very supportive teachers. Everyone pretty much knew that I just wanted to draw and paint. And the animation thing started slowly falling by the wayside. I didn't know it at the time, but everybody else could see it coming. So basically all of my teachers would just let me cut out of class early so that I could go to the art room and draw. I got my first, sort of experience studying anatomy when my biology teacher let me crash his class and draw the skull that they had. I asked him, I said, you know what? This will be really useful to me. Could I just come in and, just during your class and just set up? And he said, yeah, I don't care, sure. And that was it, and sort of everybody was kind of in on it, which is great. So again, I was very, very lucky to have that experience. We were, they trained us very well in writing and things like that, so that college was actually really easy, which is great. If we could hop to the next slide, please. So come college, 18, I finally moved to the United States, period, and I moved to Los Angeles specifically. I went to school at USC, and I majored in animation. I still had the idea of the whole animation thing in mind. What I found is that the program's aims did not quite meet the aims that I had for what I wanted to do. And so I started skipping class a lot, and found teachers that were actually very amenable to the goals that I had. I studied with, and I really lucked out this time. I studied with Glenn Villepoux and Will Weston, also Adrian Gottlieb a little later on, and they were, during my college years, my primary teachers, and I am forever indebted to them. Their guidance was sound, it was logical, and there was never such a thing as, you don't have enough talent, or even any talk of talent, actually. I was taught to think that it